Hi guys, Thogrey here for a new video, and this video will be a 3v3 tier list video for melees for season 3 of Shadowlands, and it will be like my previous video. We will talk about patch 9.2 still, so I'm trying to make all those videos at the same time because the meta can change at any moment, and we will discuss shortly about the meta, and then we do a meta analysis on Drustfar, and then we can switch and translate it into a tier list. Again, I'm judging the tier lists based on personal feeling, objective statements, and feeling of the meta, but also on the reality of the terrain. Do you see a lot of X class, X spec? Sometimes you see on Drustfar like a lot of Shadow Priests, but those Shadow Priests are often not playing Shadow Priests on the real, I would say, battlefield arenas. Like, are they really playing arenas, or are they just switching to Shadow Priest to, for example, play PvE, raids, leveling, not leveling, but I mean grinding. So there's a lot of factors. If you want to play RPGs, for example, like, again, we need to discuss about this at this very moment. Let's discuss about the meta-analysis of warriors, like melees, retries, whatever, right now. So you still see the main three culprits for melee. Often than not, every season it's always the same. So you will always see subtlety, arms, a retry, and then in a lesser extent Havoc. Now we have the little brother of arms that is growing very big, Fury, which is empowered because of the 4-set. A lot of people are having their 4-set, and I feel like a lot of arms players are going to switch to Fury because their 4-set is so much stronger than arms, for example, that it is worth it to switch, especially in the caster meta where Fury has probably more value than an arms player. It is kind of hard for warriors to actually thrive in this meta, but luckily they have very good comps to play with and to deal with, so it will be balanced in a way. So Retribution Paladin is still good because you like to play cleaves. You can play with a marksmanship hunter and have very good success as Cupid. You can also play with a double hybrid, so if you play with a shaman or a feral, you can make it work, although you will probably have more difficulties to set up kills since a lot of CDs are actually overlapping, like I mean a lot of CCs are overlapping each other. Havoc Demon Hunter still very strong, maybe underplayed in trees, but still underplayed, I would mean, in comparison with Warriors, for example. But it's still overplayed in twos, and I still think that Havoc is in a great state for them. Maybe not for me, because I don't like to play with Havoc. I'm actually very tired of playing Havoc. Every time I'm playing with my Affliction Warlock, I just want to log off. Every time I see a Havoc, it is infinitely annoying to play against. Sometimes they reach at a healing level, uh, like healing wise at the end of the game. It's ridiculous, but that's another topic for another day. Feral Druids very good, but they are limited in comps. Unholy Dk, they are meta. Like really, people are sleeping on it, but it is very strong, a lot stronger than Frost DK, for example, that you see underplayed. Outlaw Rogues still not the best rogue spec for trees, but I feel like a lot of people can switch to Outlaw if they have difficulties versus casters, because Outlaw is actually very durable and also very surprisingly strong versus casters. You just need to pair up with the right class with you and try to win those caster cleaves, because I feel like the moment then we see the opportunity or the counter to play versus caster cleaves like Destruction or Mage, and even Destruction with a Shadow Priest, or even Destruction with a Boomy or Elemental, and Frost Mage with a Fire Mage. So I also saw that, even Destruction with a Fire Mage. All these classes, if we find a good counter to it, I feel like the meta is going to switch. Windwalker Monks still not that much played, but the reason is it is just harder to play Windwalker. It's very, very squishy, but if you're doing your rotation right and you have the good CC, you can obliterate someone like 100 to 0 in a second. So it's very strong. Survival Hunter still underplayed because the other hunter specs are probably easier to play in trees, and also survival is very squishy, so you actually need to be very strong as a survival hunter to perform with that spec. But let's remind ourselves that the 4 set is very strong, so don't sleep on it. I feel like next week is going to be the week that the meta will change for the better or for the worse. We will never know. So let's discuss about the tier list now. We've discussed about melee. Let's discuss about the tier list. So we have S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, and D tier. Again, S tier is for me the god tier. It means that it's above anything. Often than not, you will see 1 or 2 classes, maybe 3, depends about the meta. A tier is the meta tier. It means that they are meta. You can play into any comps. Of course, you have counters. That's why they are not god tier, but they are clearly meta. B tier, it means they are average. You can still perform. You can still go up in rating. You can still be rank 1, I would say, if you would like to push to rank 1. But it will be infinitely harder than, let's say, playing a meta or a god tier class. Of course, average doesn't mean bad, it just means like they maybe need a buff to get closer to the A tier. C tier means that it's underpowered. Often not you will see a class there because they are like forgotten because of Blizzard or anything else, but they are really underpowered. They need help to go up to average or meta. And D tier means that they are unplayable. And often than not, you will see like one class in the total of Shadowlands in unplayable because I don't feel like a lot of classes are unplayable. I feel like they have classes that they are underperforming or average, but like unplayable, you're reaching towards arcane mages, for example. So let's start with our arms warriors, and this is a probably a controversial one. I feel they are really average these days. They are getting outscaled. They are like not as strong as season 1 and season 2. I still feel like Arms Warrior was at their best at season 1. Season 2 did give them a second wind into the legendary section. Like for example, a lot of people played Spear of Bastion, or the Necrolord also changed in season 2, so there was like an uprising, but now in season 3 I feel like they are flat, even compared to Fury Warriors that I'm going to rate it right now. For me, Fury Warriors are meta spec, is for me above Arms Warriors. I play Arms, I play Fury, and to be honest, Arms Warrior, they don't have the unique selling points compared to Fury. Arms Warriors are actually very good into a melee meta, but I feel like the meta is switching towards a custom meta or a setup meta, and not more like a cleaving melee meta, which is very hard for them to survive versus all those big bolts that you can have from Destruction Warlocks, for example. While Fury Warriors, they have the opportunity to be better and stronger versus classes than an Arms Warrior, and they have also the foresight that turns them into literal recklessness bosses. Like they are going to be having a big uptime on recklessness, and it helps a lot if you want to smooth out your rotation, I would say. Assassination Rogues, I I don't know, man. I feel like they are like gods here, but they need to play with a Shadow Priest. Mm, Look, hear me out. I'm going to put it for now at god tier because I don't see a lot of god tier specs. But Assassination Rogues is one of the specs that can actually answer to all these burst metas, because you can kidney shot for a lot longer than 7 seconds because of the trinket. If you get stunned into a vendetta and all those combining forces with sepsis, etc., often than not you can die if it's like a dampening game, or if everything is CC'd, like the healer is CC'd, the frost mage is CC'd, you can still burst someone very quickly. I feel like it is very strong and a god tier class spec. My bad. Enhancement Shaman, I'm going to be honest. I feel like before, in Turbo, you saw Arms Warrior Enhancement Shaman. You always saw Enhancement Shaman as a second fiddle, I would say. But because Arms Warrior had so many good comps, and Enhancement Shaman had like one great comp, and it's Turbo, and the second comp is Turbo Fist with Windwalkers, which has a lot less peel for you. But now the meta has changed, especially with the legendaries that you can choose as Enhancement Shaman. I feel like they are really a USP for your comp. When I'm saying USP, it is unique selling point. Why would you take an Enhancement Shaman? Now you will take Enhancement Shaman because of the burst that it can provide, because of the off healing it can provide, the consistent damage that it can provide with specific builds, and also those chain harvests that are actually very strong are going to be resetted a lot sooner. So it means that you have more burst damage, like more on-demand burst when the enemy team has no CDs, and that's the moment when you're going to hit a 25k chain harvest and people will just say, holy, someone got blown up. So Enhancement Shaman very good. I feel like they are behind Fury though, but they are meta. For me, they are actually very strong, and they have also a very good answer to casters with their grounding totem, and also with the zonal totem that makes people sucked in again. So a lot of classes can just not escape it. For example, on mage, if they are blinking that, they are going to be screwed. So for example, feral druids, I feel like they are. It's very difficult because if you're talking about feral druids, are you talking about the spec or are you going to talk about the comp? I'm going to talk about the spec. The spec is average. Of course, jungle, if you are judging feral druids because of jungle, then I would say S tier. But is it because of feral or is it because of holy priest or disc priest, for example, and hunter being very strong for them? I feel like feral druids are average, maybe better than arms, very close to the meta tier, like A tier. But I feel like if they're not playing jungle, they are not that great. They will often not be sitting in bear form, trying to maybe cheese a convoke or playing the Necrolord's consistent damage build that they have, of course, and they play mostly. They are still a very good spec though. They are average, but a very good spec if they are paired with the right specs. Now I'm actually judging only spec-wise. If we're talking about comps, of course jungle are god tier. Like for example, RMP is also god tier, and for example, Destro like MLP is also god tier. But now we are speaking about specs, and feral druids outside of jungle are pretty average. So Frost DK, they are underperforming. If you're playing TSG and you're not picking a Frost DK over an Unholy Dk, then Frost DK doesn't really have a job anymore. They are actually very strong into cleavy meta. Like for example, if you're playing a Frost DK with an Arms Warrior, you know Spear of Bastion is going to come, Abomination Limb, and then the Frostworm Drake coming to stun people, and then you have Blade Storm and all those cleaving damage. That's all good, but now at this very moment, Arms Warrior is not that good, first of all, because it is not a melee meta. Second of all, Frost DK does alright damage, but it is predictable and also disarmable and also very predictable. So it's actually stoppable. And Unholy Dk has all the goods from Frost Dk except the AoE stun, but they have more unpredictable damage. So that's why I'm going to judge right now the Unholy Dk. Unholy Dk is A tier in front of Fury Warriors. They are very good into classes. They have very good comps. They can play with Havoc. They can play with Enhancement Shaman. They can play with a Rogue. They can play with a Affliction Warlock. They can play with a Shadow Priest. They can play with, of course, Warriors. They can play with even a Retribution Paladin. They have multiple comps. Of course, they have better comps than others. Like, for example, Havoc Demon Hunter is very good. I would say even close to a God tier, it's A tier comp. But the Unholy Dk is very strong, so don't sleep on it. I've made a guide video that you can see somewhere here on the screen if you want to see the Unholy Dk guide. Of course, it is one build, but you can see multiple builds for Unholy Dk, and that's why it's very interesting to play this spec. A Havoc Demon Hunter. I'm going to say that it is A tier because it is meta, because they have great comps. Like, if I'm speaking about ferals, if I'm going to tell you Feral, you're going to answer jungle. When I'm going to tell Havoc, you're going to tell Havoc Boomy, Havoc Demon Hunter, the Death Knight, Havoc even Warrior. You have also Havoc with an Enhancement Shaman, although it is very squishy, so I would not recommend. You can play Havoc with casters, like for example a Destruction Warlock, a Affliction Warlock, even a Demonology Warlock. You can also play with a Frost Mage to keep those targets a lot closer to you and also have a second target. You can also play with Fire Mage, although this is not the best comp. Havoc has a lot of good comps. I would say the best comp that they can have is with an Unholy Dk, just because they have so much consistent damage and it makes like two good classes to face classes. Since you see a lot more classes these days, it is also very good to have that comp as well. Outlaw Rogue, for me, I'm going to be honest, it's hard to judge rogues very badly because I feel like their kit is making them very strong. I'm going to put them in front of Feral. I'm going to explain why. Outlaw Rogues are actually very strong versus the current meta. I feel like the Outlaw Rogues, although they are not that much played, you saw Was play Outlaw on the AWC. It is actually a very good counter versus MLP, a very good counter versus specific classes, specific ways of playing. Outlaw disrupts a lot of things that you want to do, and I feel like, of course, it is comp dependent. You can play RMP with Outlaw, but you also can play Outlaw with a Hunter. You can play Outlaw with a Warrior, because Outlaw you can see it more like a bruisey type of spec. You need to try Outlaw out. I'm not a fan of Outlaw, but if you want to beat those MLPs, you want to beat those casters, I feel like Outlaw has a good chance, like Assassination Rogue, to shine on those, I would say, confrontations with the casters. So, Retribution. Let's talk about Stability Rogues first. I want to have a distinction that actually Stability Rogues are S tier. Now, it's debatable who is better between Assassination Rogues and Stability Rogues. It's actually difficult. I would say they are equal. It depends about the matchups. It depends about the comp that you're playing. It depends about the way you're playing. They are actually a S tier class, I would say in general. Like the class itself is S tier. I would say Outlaw is close to the A tier, but just because it is Outlaw, it has less options for them to perform. So that's why Stability Rogues have dual. They have great instant burst. They can also be very slippery, very annoying. I still think I prefer an Assassination Rogue because it is my playstyle. I prefer to be like on the people like all the time and not being running around just to reset CDs and then go back when you have CDs. I prefer to be all the time on the target and try to make pressure. So, Retribution Paladin. They are definitely better than twos. Um, it is hard, man. I want to put it in meta, but I'm going to be honest. For me, it is average. It is average. I would say it's between average and meta, but for me, it's closer to average than meta. The reason is they have one build at this very moment. It is the Necrolord build. They have a few comps, but to be honest, the best comps that they are playing are actually not that much performing in contrary with other comps, for example. Like if you are playing Retribution Paladin with a Arms Warrior, it is still very strong. You can still win on an opener, but it's not the same because there is a lot more classes that are actually countering you, or they know how to deal with your burst. While, for example, a Destruction Warlock with a Frost Mage, it is very hard to deal with the consistent and bursty damage that they have and the control that they have overall with their teammate, like the Holy Priest. So, Retribution Paladin, I would say it's very close to A tier, but I'm going to keep it in average. Survival Hunter. Survival Hunter is behind Havoc. I'm going to explain why I rate Survival Hunter very high. The only reason is they have a crazy force set and a crazy amount of burst. They just need to find a good teammate. They can play with a feral, but they can also play with a DK. They can also play with a paladin. They can play with a arms warrior, even although not the best. They can play with a lot of classes. They can also play with rogues, and let's not forget rogues are actually busted. It's not like a feral druids where they are actually a bit stuck with jungle because kitty cleave is not that good, and fire mage feral, it is good, but it's because of the fire mage, not because of the feral. So I rate survival hunter higher than feral, and that's why it's automatically going A tier. But you can debate between retribution paladin and survival being in A tier or high B tier. Depends on how you see it. For me, survival hunter has a unique capacity to be very annoying towards a lot of specs. They are not going to lose versus affliction warlocks. They're not going to lose versus shadow priest. Mind games on a hunter is useless most of the time, so that's why I rate a survival hunter quite high. Windwalker. I'm hesitating because for me it is very god here, but it's hard to pull off. Look, I know you're going to react on it. Windwalker is for me god tier behind rogues. I would say if it's between S and A tier, I would say it's A plus. I'm not going to make ratings out of ratings, so I'm going to keep it like that. Windwalkers are very strong because they have crazy burst, crazy mobility. They can actually win versus Destruction Warlock and Frost Mage, but they need to play it right. They can play with a Fire Mage, they can play with an Enhancement Shaman, they can play with a Demon Hunter, they can play with a lot of specs. But it is harder to pull off. So it's not because I'm putting in god tier that it is face rolling. I would just say like they are god tier if they are played by, for example, Chun-Li. Chun-Li makes Windwalker very god tier. While someone that is like for me, I'm not a Windwalker bane. If I play Windwalker, I would make it like unplayable. But I'm not playing Windwalker, and most of the time, above 2100, you will play versus people that are actually capable to play with their class. So this is my tier list. Let me know what you think about this tier list. Of course, it is my opinion. It's hard to make everyone actually satisfied with a tier list because maybe they prefer Frost DK a bit higher, or they prefer Arms Warrior to be lower or higher. They don't understand Windwalker, for example. They don't understand why Assassination Rogues are god tier. But I feel like this trees meta is very balanced, but also imbalanced because it depends about comps that you're facing and also trinkets that are actually needing to be thrown into the garbage because of their capacity to lower the skill level actually. So again, let me know in the comments below what you think about this video, what you think about the placements of the tier list. Of course, subscribe to the channel if you like those kind of contents. I'm not only making tier lists, but like I said, I also make guides. I have a guide for affliction warlocks, I have a guide for Unholy Dk, and there might be a third guide coming up from a character that I'm actually playing right now. But there is also a possibility that I'm going to go deeper in those specs and explain why those specs are strong. So thank you for watching this video. Have a great day and be sure to be safe. Bye.